Sometimes we fight hard. We take the people, we be optimistic, and we gonna win games, bro. All right, 3, 1, 2, 3.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Big Douglas Show. It's a Friday, so it's inside the command center time where we get you as close to the commanders as we can. To do that, my buddy Lake Lewis joins the show today. Lake, how are you?
What's going on, my friend? Good seeing you at the first game, and it was a win, so that was always good.
It was interesting. I hadn't been to a game in so long, and I certainly hadn't been to a game where I had met some media members and gotten to know people in that vein. It was a reminder that while the games are fun for those of you that it is a job, it's a hustle when you're there.
Oh man, I mean, literally. I was invited out to a couple tailgates, and I've been telling them for a long time. And these are people that come out to my events and support me. So I was just like, this year I'm going to make it a point, to just get back out there. Everybody's in high spirits with the team and new ownership. And I'm like, I get a lot of love from the fans out there. And I can't speak for my other colleagues, but fans are what keeps me going, so I just wanted to show that love back, and lo and behold, I see my dude right here sitting right there. So that was just good to finally, officially meet in person.
Yeah, because like you go way back to the very beginning of this podcast. I believe you and I did the very first season preview of this one when it was audio only on the Anchor, and we were dropping all the time. So the love has always been real, and I have always appreciated it.
Oh no, man, you're a class act. And, just to see you back out there it was really nice, man. It really was. And, again, I always tell people, I try to deal with just good people. I don't deal with any of the other nonsense. And, just to see you out there and, while we were talking, there were people that were happy to see you out there as well. So, that's a testament to you as a person, so anytime you need me, like I told you a long time ago, I'm there. Just let me know.
You're still rocking the sports journey. You got the after practice podcast. I know 2 jobs is not enough for you, Lake. What else you got keeping you busy these days?
Yes, it's one major one coming, and I'm excited. I'm really excited for it, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited for that one. But I'm also doing some insider stuff with ABC TV, JLA in DC, and shout out to Natalie. Did a great job with myself after the first game, did a post game thing, and then of course Scott Abraham as well. So those folks are a family to me as well, and then I just recently signed up with PSF. So Pro Sports Fans. It's an app that former NFL quarterback Sean Salisbury has put out, and asked me to be part of it, and I'm be part of that. And the podcast, After Practice podcast, will now be on that format too. And I have a really big announcement as far as where my podcast is going to be. We did a couple from Breakers. It was more like meet and greets, but the actual full-blown podcast with some players. I already have a couple players lined up for this Monday. But you have to wait till tomorrow to find out the location. But it's in DC. I'll let people know that now. It's near a Subway, and it's a major brand. So we're excited about that. And that's going to be for the full season every Monday night. So leading up to Monday Night Football.
The grind never stops. How did you, I know you're from the district, how did you kind of get into this whole business?
Well, I went to Penn State undergrad, and I was a broadcast journalism major there. Played basketball briefly and had to make the decision what was more important. And I knew, although some people may have thought that, I knew I wasn't going pro or anything like that. So I just needed to flip what I was going to be a pro at. And for me, it wasn't a hard decision because, and I tell people this, sometimes you just have to be at the right place at the right time. The person that ran the student radio station was looking for a person that could, be the director, the sports director for the station as a student, and was also looking for somebody that could call the play-by-play for the student station for football. Now, Penn State football, that's huge. So that's what I did. And it just opened up doors, led me to ESPN, and, the rest is history. But yeah, this is something that this craft is something I've been working on for my whole adult life. And, it's been a lot of peaks and valleys, ups and downs. As you know, it's a battle of attrition. I mean, if you're not strong, this isn't the field to be in, because the other thing you have to deal with, unfortunately, in our business, you have to deal with some people who slither around a little bit and don't want to open doors for other people, or if they see you're doing something well, they try to block you. And I've taken on a whole new life, my friend, as far as this year. I'm trying to be a sounding board for a lot of people that don't have that voice yet. And I'm taking some bullets, but at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to do this because I didn't have a mentor in this business when I got into it. I didn't have a blueprint. And as a business owner, I had to learn to do things along the way. And now for me, I feel like I have to be a person that can be a mentor and help other people as long as they seek help.
Do you think the way that media is kind of heading will get to a point where people with just podcasts will get media memberships? I know right now that is not, you can't get it. You can't get that, at least not in Washington.
Well, that's what I'm fighting for. And that's
Right
what
on.
I'm fighting for in DC. And I have no problem saying this. I've spoken to Jason about this, Jason Wright. And just because, I can use me as an example. I've been in this business for over 25 years. I've been at ESPN Radio as a drive time host in Florida, doing my show from Disney World, of all places. I've also, when you think about that, I've also was a senior writer for USA Today for the sports, for Redskins Wire at the time. I created that. And,
Okay.
Locked On, the podcast, I was the first person that did that for Washington. So I say all these things because sometimes when you step out and do your own thing, people look at your outlet and think, it's not a big boy, so they shouldn't be out here. And I know I'm dealing with that as we speak, just to let you know. But then I need, people in the organization say, no, look at this guy's resume. It might be bigger than yours. So with that being said, I'm glad you asked me how long I've been doing this and where did I get to start? Because this is what I went to college for, So yeah. I think, unfortunately, the world we're living in now, and your show's taken on a whole new light, and I'm glad we're doing this because I did want to speak about it, because I know guys like yourself. I know guys like Rio Robinson, guys who are grinding and putting out great content. Sometimes people look at it and they say, well, you're not a big name entity. But the bottom line is, and I had to explain this to PR for the team, don't look at the entity, look at the person who's delivering the information, because maybe that person has a huge following on social media. I know I do. And I had to remind them. I had SportsCenter retweet something that I said, and they put per Lake Lewis, and it had 10 million views on it. So my thing is, they're not going to just put up any person if you're not someone that they respect. And I think that's what this is all about. It's about respect. I respect what you do. I respect what, guys like Rio does. I mean, there's so many blogs out there now. There's so many online posts. But at the end of the day, if it's bringing positive media and positive eyes to the team, I don't see why, for whatever reason, you guys would not be able to be out there. And I'm fighting for that for you. I really am.
Well, I appreciate it, because I think it's certainly time.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into the football team a little bit. We're at it's 2:15 on a Friday. What does the injury report look like?
Man, I mean, it's looking pretty clean.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the big question is Logan. Is he going to play? Is he not? Took that big hit last week in Denver. I'm not one to speculate, but I just don't see how he plays if he's not fully a go today, So with that said, I just think that this is a team that's kind of gotten away from the injury bug, because over the years, Doug, We've every week it's like a mash unit. But the way they're practicing, they changed up some things from Monday to Tuesdays now. I just think it's helping. And then on top of that, when you have a lot of youth, you kind of dodge the injury bullet because guys aren't breaking down anymore. Sure. So yeah. So right now they look pretty good.
It is a young team loaded with draft picks that Commanders have picked themselves. It kind of a departure from the years past, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're young, you're hungry, you want to play. So you might have an injury that no one even knows about because you want to be on the field at all times. And I think that's what we're seeing with this team, that youthful exuberance, and they're 2-0. Who doesn't want to be on the field when you start 2-0? And who doesn't want to see where they stand as a young player against a veteran-laden team like Buffalo? A team that is a legit Super Bowl contender. Even though I think their window's kind of closing, they've got to do something here. But I think for Washington, you're ascending. And if you play Buffalo tough this week, and God forbid you get a W Sunday, I don't think you're going to see anybody on the injured list next week in Philly.
No matter what.
No matter what, exactly.
I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, Blake, and it feels like maybe we're not giving Ron enough credit for what it takes to bring in a guy like Eric Bieniemy, give him the keys and say, we need you. We need you. Come in and fix it. And you do it. That takes a lot. In a league where everybody's got their chest puffed out, it feels like Ron's not getting enough credit for doing things that most guys aren't necessarily willing to do, right? I mean, that is a humongous name in the football community. And I think Ron gets a little credit for that, right?
Well, he does. And I think it was a gutsy move on his part because let's face it, some people could look at that move like this could mess with your own job security from a head coaching standpoint.
Yeah, right.
But I looked at it like it was about his job security because what he had in house wasn't working for him, and it was close to getting him out of there. So I think you bring in an Eric Bieniemy. It's unfortunate that Eric has to go through these steps to get a head coaching gig. I'm predicting it. I already said it. He's going to be the next coach in Washington. So I don't think people need to worry about him leaving. And I say these things because Ron would not bring this guy here if he did not think that there is a possibility that he would become the head coach of this football team. And I would be ventured to say, not his agent, but I'm sure it's in the contract. He came here for a reason. And he saw the young talent that's in place. He saw a quarterback that he's literally said to us that, he told me that they looked at in Kansas City. They looked at Sam Howell in Kansas City, so they knew what this kid can do. And I think for Ron, he does need to get a lot of credit for that. And as tough as we've been on Ron sometimes for X's and O's, Ron's brought so much professionalism to this outfit that you can't knock that. You have to give the man credit for that. This is a professional organization, and they've got some just dynamic, great guys in the locker room. One of the nicest locker rooms that I've been inside of. And, that says a lot about your coach. He knew what type of player he wanted to draft or bring in via free agency. And all these guys sit in the locker room and talk and laugh. And it's not like years where I've seen guys get in there and get out and they didn't mingle with each other. You have offensive guys joking with defensive guys now. And that's always a good sign.
Right. I hadn't planned on going down this route, but since you kind of mentioned it, what does it look like for Eric Bieniemy to become the head coach? Like obviously something's got to happen with Ron. You think they'll move him? You think he'll get fired? Because I've had this conversation before, and it's an interesting one, right? It's like, oh, well, I can see Ron moving into the front office for Eric Bieniemy. He brought Eric Bieniemy, and it's like, well, if everybody's going to keep their jobs and Eric Bieniemy keeps his job, then they'll have had to win this year. If they win this year, Ron's been here for 4 years trying to get this to a winning outfit. Feels hard to imagine that he just give that up for his lifelong buddy, for his coaching buddy, Eric Bieniemy. So I don't know. I understand how we get there. You tell me how we get there, because I don't see Ron just giving up a winner when he's been working so hard to get a winner.
I mean, me personally, I don't see Ron being the coach next year. I don't. I even said even if he holds a Super Bowl Lombardi trophy over his head, I just don't see it. And
That
I
would be
think
by his choice then.
absolutely. And I
Okay.
think one thing about that you learn with Ron is that he is about leaving a legacy behind. He's big on that. And maybe doesn't say it, but you can tell the way he maneuvers. He's about helping people and bringing in some class people along the way. And he knows what Eric Bieniemy's been up against. And I could see him stepping away to secure Eric Bieniemy as a coach in Washington. And if this thing is going on the right rails, and they're doing great, and hypothetically speaking, let's just say they advance into the playoffs and do well, maybe he comes back for his 5th year. That's fine because Eric will still be here. But if they advance far into the playoffs, there are going to be some teams coming for Eric Bieniemy finally.
Yes.
And that's why I say I could see Ron stepping aside so that Eric gets the job here, because that helps Ron's legacy too. It shows that he's left this thing in great shape, and maybe it helps him get upstairs. He doesn't want to coach forever now. So it could help him go upstairs. And I don't know what the role would be. It could be even in a consulting role. I don't know, but I don't think he'd be the GM or anything like that. I just know that Eric probably would have some say in how he wants to have some things ran for him. But the way this stuff would happen, to answer your question, is they'd have to have a nice little run in them. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say that they could. I'm not saying this is not a Super Bowl team. It's not. But it's a team that could scare the hell out of a Super Bowl team. So, they might be a year away or 2 years away from really being, one of those upper echelon teams. But I'll say this, not to stray here, Doug, but Philadelphia is to me is Washington's blueprint, because we saw Jalen Hurts play 4 games this rookie year behind Carson Wentz of all people. And we saw Sam Howell come in for his rookie campaign and showed enough to become the starter. Well, Jalen Hurts in his second year, they made the playoffs as a wild card, 8-7-1. They lost that first game, but you could see there was something there. And for this year, the way Washington's starting, they look like they could be a wild card team. The third year in Philadelphia, they went to the Super Bowl. So why not next year, Washington making that big super leap, with Sam Howell having a full year under his belt and everything coming together, which it looks like they're ascending upward. So that's their blueprint. And if those things happen, guess what happened in Philadelphia when they went to the Super Bowl last year? Their offensive coordinator's gone, their defensive coordinator's gone. If you're Washington, you can't let Eric Bieniemy leave the building, so you may have to escalate things a little faster.
And on that, I agree with you, Lake. I once had a conversation with Mark Bullock about this, and I was asking him, does the number suggest that it's better to have a defense or offensive minded head coach? And he said, Doug, here's the one thing I'll say about the offensive minded head coach is that if you have a good offense, somebody's going to want the offensive coordinator every year. So if you're a defensive minded head coach and you're putting up points, you lose. And I will say, if Howell plays well this year, there's something to be said to making sure that he won't be on his 4th offensive coordinator in his very young. So I do get that, where maybe prioritizing Bieniemy, no matter how you have to do it, is the way to go there. You mentioned kind of the progression that Philly took. Let's not compare our offensive lines, because theirs is much better than what we had now. But I'll say this, and this is kind of where I was getting to next, Lake, is that interior 3, they might got something there.
Yeah, I tweeted that out actually on Sunday. That Nick Gates, Sam Cosmi, and Sadiq Charles, the interior part of the line is going to be okay. And the only thing that's going against them is lack of experience playing together. But once they get more games under their belt, they're going to be more cohesive and look good. But we all know the team struggles on the edges, and they've got to address. They have to address their tackles this offseason. You can't run from this any longer. You're going to have to draft one, and you're going to have to find one in free agency. And once you do that, think of how dynamic the offense will really be, because Sam Howell, I just don't want him to get punch drunk or get scared in the pocket, which I don't think he will. But he's taken some big shots already this year. The Arizona game, that was a cheap shot, but he probably should have got down. I'm sure he'd be the first to say that. Matter of fact, he did say that. But, last week, Charles Leno was matador out there. Like he wasn't even
Yeah.
touching the guys going by him. And I don't know if he's hurt and he doesn't want to say it. He's a super nice dude, but they've got to upgrade that left tackle spot. No question about it.
Randy Gregory's going to run by a lot of guys. So in fairness, it felt like the tackles had a much better second half than they did first half. So give them credit, I think, for adjusting a little bit. Yes, and sliding protection, they're going to have to do that. They'll have to do that again this week too, for sure.
That was Bieniemy. Bieniemy started calling. The tempo totally changed and everything was a lot faster. And it seemed like Sam Howell responds better to that too, because you go back to North Carolina, they were a pro-style offense in North Carolina when he was there under Mac Brown. So much so that, he said the RPOs and the concepts were the same thing in this offense that he had in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have to think as much. So I think Eric noticed that. They started chipping, doing things on the edges to help. And he got balls down, he got a chance to sit in the pocket a little bit longer, maybe another millisecond or so, but that makes a big difference. And, I think that if they can do that, because let's face it, Buffalo's front is Buffalo goes 9 deep, 10 deep, if you really want to count it on their front. I'm talking about their defensive line, 9, 10 deep, and they're coming. And, this is going to be one of those games where, he's going to have to really be creative with the offensive line to ward those guys off.
Two teams that are built very similar on defense, for obviously reasons why. Yeah. When's the last time you mentioned EB and the adjustments? When's the last time we've seen adjustments like that in Washington? Man, it's a long time.
You might have to start throwing.
I still had color in my beard, like.
Yeah, you might have to start throwing out Gibbs because seriously, and I don't mean the second coming, I mean the first Gibbs. Because Jay Gruden, although he had prolific offenses, they kind of struggled with the run game for one, and they kind of struggled in the second half of games. They melted down as the game went on. And I don't know if that's so much coaching as it is the will of the coach. And I think, remember, Eric's tough on us and, this is hard. This is the reason why it's supposed to be like that. And he told me specifically, Lake, it's supposed to be hard, right? It's training camp. And I'm like, yeah, crack the whip, because when you haven't been good, you don't have a leg to stand on to say what's hard and what's not. And I think this isn't just something we're seeing now for these first 2 regular season games, Doug. We saw this in the preseason. We saw second and third string guys fighting and battling every game, and they were winning games at the end of games in the preseason. So this is what you need. This is why he was hard on you, so that come the second half of games and when the adjustments are made, you adjust your mentality as well, and you come out and you fight. And we're seeing that. And I haven't seen this with this team in a long time, this kind of resolve.
No doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, listen, you just wouldn't have imagined that the team could have come back 21-3 with anybody else running the show. They did not. That's just one. They didn't have it, and then as I don't even blame them anymore. Now that we kind of see what it is and how they get it, we didn't have anybody here to do it like that. Like, it's interesting. I've been on like a apology tour is not quite right, but I had it wrong in preseason. I assumed that we were going to see Kendall Fuller on one side, Emmanuel Forbes on the other side, and then they'd bring in St. Juice when it was time for the small nickel. That's not how it's been. It has been Fuller on one side, Benjamin St. Juice getting every snap on the other side, and then kicking into nickel when they want to do small nickel. Are you surprised like I am? Because I figured because Forbes was the draft pick, he'd start outside. That's not how this regime does it, though. They make you earn it, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, and they're not throwing too much at him so fast. I mean, that kid is really good. I mean, for my money, from a skill set standpoint, he's their best corner. I really believe that. Not so much down to his technique yet and all that, but I just mean from sheer intangibles and talent. That kid's phenomenal. Fast, intelligent. He does have really good technique for a rookie. He just has to see the game in front of him. Sometimes he gets behind him. You don't want that. So I think learning from a Kendall Fuller, the ultimate pro, the ultimate team player, and then looking at Benji St. Juste, who I've always loved. I love his game. I love grabby cornerbacks because when people say, "Oh man, he's always pass interference," I mean, yeah, he got away with one at the end of the game. That was pass interference. But the reason why I love grabby guys is because it means they're competing. And I'd rather you get a hold or your pass interference, defensive pass interference, than to let a guy just go right by you or let a guy be 10 yards in front of you catching the ball. That's not Benji. So to get back to Emmanuel Forbes, I just think that they have the depth now that they can do this. They can do situational football. You know, certain times in the game, you'll have him out there as a one corner. We saw that, you know, down the stretch in the Cardinals game, and he had that big play where he jumped the route at the very end. That's when you get a chance to kind of see things a little bit in front of you as opposed to be thrown into it immediately. And I think as the season progresses, you're going to see him move into number one. I've been saying this for the longest time. I think by the end of the season, no offense to Kendall, because that's my guy, I think you're going to see
playing great.
Absolutely been playing heck of football. But I think you're going to see Benji on one side, you're going to see Forbes on the other side. But you know, listen, let's face it. These guys are getting X amount of reps per game. You know, it's not like they're out there and they're getting 5 reps in and that's it. No, these guys they're interchangeable, and that's Jack's defense. You know, sometimes I don't like so much of the subbing in and out, but that's his defense, and it's to keep guys fresh and keep bodies able so that they can make their situational moves when they need to.
Like, it was obvious and apparent that Montez was glad to have his hunting partner back. And as much as I like James Smith-Williams, and listen, somebody's going to pay him a lot of money when the season's over, and rightfully so. He's a good player, and he's been good. And he's no chase.
He's no chase.
And that's no disrespect to him. But it was obvious that the twitch was back. You could see kind of the chase that went to overall. It was kind of exciting. And you could see it on Montez's face. It was like, oh, yeah, we're doing some things out here. He's going to be important for whatever they're going to get done this year.
Yeah. And you know, I've been telling people since OTAs, mini camp, you know, he was kind of being held back during those times. I mean, he had the brace on, but you still saw stuff, you know. Preseason and training camp, I was like, man, this guy is just toying with the offensive line. Him and Montez were, I'm almost certain that they at some point were told lay off a little bit because we got to get some plays on offense in. That's how much they were in the backfield. They were just disrupting everything. And of course, John Allen and Daron Payne were doing the same thing. So you saw, man, these 4 guys, you get them on the field at the same time and then let them develop together. Listen, there's some really good defensive lines in the NFL. I'm going to say pound for pound, those 4 are the best in the league. If when they're on their A game, nothing's better than that. I'm sorry. And
with $85 million in cap room next year, Lake, they can kind of afford to give Tez the bag this year and at least tag Chase for another year. That's
exactly what's going to happen. And I'm glad you said that, because when everyone keeps telling me, oh, they're battling each other to see who the team keeps, stop it. This team, if anything they've shown you is that they give money to 2 players every year. I thought they were going to get Cam Curl taken care of this offseason, but they're probably looking at it from a standpoint that you got a Percy Butler. You have, you know, some other guys, Quan Martin. You know, let's see how this plays out. But their team and their direction and goal was to be centered around their defensive line. Let's call it like it is. And they have every reason and opportunity to uphold what that belief is. And I do believe that they're going to sign both those guys. I truly believe that. If Chase has the type of year that we're expecting for him to have, there's no way that you let him walk. There's just no way. You franchise him, if anything, or you franchise Montez. But I do think it's Chase that'll probably get the franchise tag. And I think Montez, and I also think Cam Curl will be the guys to get the contracts.
I do too. And that's why Chase ends up, because they know what Cam means to the actual. That's a different discussion. We won't get in that today. But I mean, they know how important he is. I know we can get into the turnovers discussion, but when it comes down to it, they win football.
That guy's super intelligent, and he's a leader out there. And the other thing we got to say, you got a rookie quarterback pretty much on a rookie contract. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, he's in his second year, but he's still under a rookie contract.
The
Jahan
problem
Dotson,
is you get no 5th-year option. So in 2 years, you've got to make a
oh
decision.
no, you're
on
going to
that.
have to pay him. He's going to get
Yeah.
broke off. We know that, but that's 2 years. We'll get to that point later.
Yes, that's
Hopefully, salary caps go up, more money in the league. You can do some things. Keep selling out the stadium; it'll help too. So the other thing is that Jahan Dotson, one of your other star players, on a rookie deal. So they've got wiggle room here. You mentioned the 85 in cap room, but they have other options with those tags. So nobody's leaving. Stop talking about it.
I completely agree. All right, let's run through a couple more here. More rushing yards on Sunday. Sam Howell or Josh Allen?
Whew, that's a good one. I'm going to say Josh Allen. And I'm going to say that because unfortunately, mobile quarterbacks have kind of given Washington some fits. They let the edge rushers go up top and they run underneath. And Josh Allen's a big man, so he's going to get you 5-6 yards just falling down. So I would say Josh Allen, and I don't want Sam Howell having to run too much on this defense because that might not be a good sign.
No, I agree. And I guess it's going to, I mean, we're down here. I'm down here in North Carolina, as you know, we're getting what you guys are going to get on Sunday, I think, and it's nasty.
So my better half is actually in Nag's Head as we speak, vacationing with the sisters. And right before we came on, I talked to her and she said, it's literally opening up. And she said, and now we got to come back on Sunday and go up to the game, and we're going to be out on the field drenched. I'm like, yeah, well, it's part of the job.
That's right. More sacks, Buffalo or Washington?
Washington. Yes. And I know that sounds homerish, like when you cover the team, you're going to say that. I just think that in these type of games, this is where you see how good the defensive line for Washington is. And Josh Allen is a big target to hit. So I just think that they're going to be able to dial up some things to get some pressure on him. And I do think that you see Montez have one, Chase have one, and one of the interior guys have one. Maybe a linebacker, maybe Jamin Davis gets in there. So I could see Buffalo 4 sacks, Washington 5 sacks.
Yeah. I do think it's going to be like that, though. And interestingly enough, earlier we discussed about how these teams are built. Both strong D lines, both of them, their offensive line ain't any better than ours, I don't think. I mean, I've taken a look at it, and I think they know that too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Last one, over under 1.5 turnovers for the Commanders.
That's a great question, man. Because I could see
like
one.
They need to win late.
Yeah.
They need to.
If you get 2, you win. just call it like it is. So I'm gonna say over. I think, man, that's a great question, Doug.
Because Josh will turn the ball over,
absolutely
but how much throwing will they do? I like the running back James Cook, obviously. So I mean,
and he could be stripped in the pocket, a strip sack, fumble. Sure. We saw that last week. So I do think that. Yeah, I think they get an interception, and I think they get a sack turnover, strip sack, 2.
Like, we're obviously not going to let you get out of here with telling us what you think the score is going to look like on Sunday. What do you got? I think I put one of these up every week on Twitter. I think I went 27-24 Buffalo, although I think I'd take the number down, realizing how nasty the weather's going to be. So I think maybe I'm around like 17-14. I still think they're playing with house money, which I love. This Buffalo team's pretty good.
Buffalo's great. And I'm going to say this game is going to be a 20-19 Washington victory. Don't know how Buffalo is going to get to 19. Maybe they get the safety. I don't know. But I do think that this is a winnable football game. And I said if Washington did what they were supposed to do and win these first 2 games, which we thought they should win, now you have a chance to show the world that you've really sped up the process and you've arrived. I do think with this weather that is going to impact the game, it helps Washington because Washington has the superior run game. Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson give you a lot. And if you look at Buffalo, what's their one Achilles heel that you can say isn't a strength on their team? And it's the running game. No offense to James Cook. I like him. I don't see him running on Washington's defense. I just don't. So I think that that's going to be something that helps in this game. And I'm taking Washington by 20-19.
There you go. Lake Lewis, you're the best, brother. I appreciate you always.
Thank you so much, man. It's an honor to come on here with you. We got to do this again, and not in 2 years.
That's right. It was too long. I had looked at the list for like, boy, that's a long time. How was that possible?
Absolutely. But no, I appreciate you having me on, my friend. Good seeing you, man.